Welcome to the Top Advisor Podcast, brought to you by Proud Mouse Pod Rocket Academy. I'm your host, Bill Cates, creator of the Cates Academy for Relationship Marketing. In each episode, I interview one of our industry's top performers, getting them to pass on their secrets to success to you, so that you can impact more lives and generate more income. Now, on to the show. Welcome. Before we get going, I want to let you know about some free resources that I invite you to retrieve after you've listened to today's interview. You'll find checklists, guides, videos, and other tools. Simply go to referralcoach.com/resources. Now write this down unless you're driving. referralcoach.com/resources. It's also in the show notes. And while you're there, make sure you sign up for our weekly tips. We're always sharing best practices, and we'll notify you our newest podcast interviews as they go live. And while these tools are free for you, I think you're going to find them quite valuable. Now, on with today's show. I have a little bit of a ramp up to get to today's guest, so bear with me. I think if someone were to promise you that you could become more productive than you are now, would you want that? Probably, right? I mean, how many times have you wished there were more hours in the day? I know I do practically every day. And if someone were to promise you to help you increase your productivity, would you believe that's possible? Well, you probably would. I wager that most people believe that they could be more productive if they had the right system, the right habits in place. Though I suspect you'd come to this with a healthy dose of skepticism, which I know I would. So what is productivity anyway? I think it's a good idea to define that, and what would an increase look like for you? So in preparation for this show, I went to the absolute premier top of the top authority on the topic, and that would be ChatGPT. Seriously, the dictionary definitions I found for productivity were lame. So here's what ChatGPT told me. For a financial advisor, productivity can be defined as the efficiency and effectiveness with which one utilizes resources, time, energy, money, and skills to achieve specific goals and objectives for themselves and their clients. Okay, I'll buy that. This artificial intelligent genius went on to say, an increase in productivity for a financial advisor would manifest in several ways: time management, the ability to handle more clients and tasks within a given time frame. This could mean attending to a larger client base, spending more time with current clients, or spending more time on research and analysis, leading to better recommendations. I would also add more time for golf, fishing, whatever your hobby is. Enhanced communication, improved communication skills can lead to better interactions with clients, understanding their needs more effectively, providing tailored advice, streamlined processes, developing efficient workflows, and automating certain repetitive tasks that can save time and reduce the risk of errors, etc. Knowledge and expertise, continuously updating knowledge about financial markets, tax regulations, investment strategies, economic trends can help in making, better, more well-informed decisions. And client satisfaction. Higher productivity often correlates with better client satisfaction. Satisfied clients are more likely to refer others, leading to potential growth in an advisor's client base. This is all ChatGPT, by the way. ChatGPT concluded by saying, it is essential to note that increased productivity should not come at the cost of compromising the quality of service or making hasty decisions. Striking the right balance between productivity and quality is crucial for sustainable success as a financial advisor. I don't know about you, I'm pretty impressed with that definition, and who wouldn't want all of those things, right? So with us today to dig into this further is Brian Margolis, the founder of Productivity Giant, author of the book, The Index Card Business Plan, and creator of the Pillar System. In Brian's LinkedIn profile, he says, I help entrepreneurs and sales pros go from chaos to clarity with a weekly strategy so simple it fits on an index card. Well, I love that. Simplicity, clarity, everybody wants that, right? So Brian Margolis, after this long ramp up, welcome to Top Advisor Podcast.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you. I'm glad you went and did that, not me.
Well, I like to do a little prep, and if we're going to talk about a word that people throw around all the time, productivity, get some clarity on that, right? So, what did you think of what Chat GPT came up specific to financial professionals?
I guess I think of it even more simply,
Hmm.
which is
Yeah, because it fits on a business card, index card, right?
index card, right? Right. When I think of productivity, I think of the equation input, right? Input
Mhm.
times leverage equals output. And
Okay.
leverage is that multiple, right? So if you put out time and mental energy, what is that multiple to get you, an ROI back in terms of results? And productivity is anything that increases that leverage. I
Hmm.
just look at it as the multiple in that equation, right? I mean, getting more done just on its own is not productive, right? It's the results you're looking for. So input times leverage equals output, results, however you want to think of it. I look at productivity as that multiple.
Gotcha. Well, we're going to dig into this and make sure that it gets clear for everybody. So, your book is titled "The Index Card Business Plan," and it's based on what you've titled the Pillar System, as I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us more about these processes. What are the tools? What motivated you to create them in the first place? What problems do they solve? Opportunities they create? Let's dig into this.
Yeah, I mean, the 30-second version of what prompted me to create it is that, I'm a former research scientist in a past life, certainly not what people would think of as an entrepreneur or a business person. And when I struck out on my own over 2 decades ago, I spent a lot of time thinking I was the problem because I never had formal business or sales training or anything like that. So this was actually a system that I developed for myself. And again, just this, what I used to refer to as my dumb little index card system,
Mm-hmm.
that as I started becoming more successful, getting more results, people started asking me questions, and I would kind of embarrassingly share that, well, this is how I do it, right? I don't have any fancy business plan. And I realized as an entrepreneur, oh my God, everyone's as big a mess as I am. And so there might be an opportunity here. And that's when I started helping people with the index card business plan, meaning helping people create their weekly strategy.
Gotcha. So what are some of the elements of the index card business plan and the pillar system? Let's dig into some of the what to do's and why to do them.
So the way the way to think about it is as follows. And I think there's a word we should probably define, another word, which is strategy,
Mm.
right? When I think of somebody who runs a reactive business, which is most people, right? Their current level of success is kind of, you take their skills, their talent, their work ethic, and you go, go, go. You kind of grind your way to a certain level of success, right? Run faster, more hours, more of everything. And you can be pretty successful, in a reactive business. In an intentional business, which is where I'm trying to get my advisors and my clients to, we kind of add to that. Instead of saying just your skills, talent, and your work ethic, we say skills, talent, your work ethic, and your strategy. And that's where you go next level. Now, the definition of strategy is, as we're talking about it today, and I think this is important, it's basically when you predetermine, right, where to focus your skills, your talent, and your work ethic to get the biggest ROI. And I don't think most people are built that way. I think most people are very reactive. And I tend to define strategy with the parable of the fly, right? I think we can all agree that flies are pretty good at flying. I mean, we literally named them the fly, right? It's the biggest honor, right? I mean, they're fast, they're nimble, they'll fly all day. No one's doubting their abilities, and so it's kind of like, why does one fly wind up dead on the windowsill and another one zips out the door? And the answer is pretty simple, which is one points their skills, talent, and work ethic in one direction, and one points it in the other, and you get very different results. And so when it comes to this pillar system, right, this creating your weekly strategy, what we're helping the advisor or the client do is figure out where they should focus each week, their skills, their talent, their work ethic, to get the biggest ROI, right? To get the most results for that time and mental energy that they're going to put out. I think most people believe inherently they know where to focus. And I find when you actually break it down, they don't. And so we run them through this process to figure out what we call their pillars, their weekly pillars, so they can get the biggest ROI by the end of the week.
Tell us more about the pillars then. I'm assuming are the elements that go on the card.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So what it basically, the way you want to think about it is some people have 4 pillars, some people have 8 pillars, it's a smaller range, maybe between 4 and 9 or something like that. And the idea is real simple. These pillars, and I want to be clear, these are activities that you control whether they get done. Okay. So these are not, these are not goals or hopes or anything like that. And the idea is, as long as I, being the person, with this strategy, as long as I execute on these, let's call them 7 pillars that I've identified, which again are in my control, I know on Friday night, regardless of that week's results, that I had a great week, right? That I'm 1 week closer to hitting my goals. We call that the Friday night feeling, because let's be honest, in the world of financial advising, you can do all the right things 1 week, and for whatever reason, things just don't happen, right? A new client doesn't land or anything like that. You can also go on vacation for 3 days, come back on Thursday, spend the whole day playing catch up and checking email, and then open an email Thursday later in the day that says, this client made the decision to move their assets over to you. And then Friday morning, it happens again. Doesn't mean you did all the right things that week. These are lag indicators. And so anyway, the pillars themselves are the activities that you identify that kind of serve as your 80-20.
So what are some of the pillars what are the things that the folks you work with or advisors in general might have as their pillars for any given week?
Yeah. So we break them into 3 categories. The first kind would be what we call an activity or a consistency pillar. All right.
Okay.
That's something that you already know how to do effectively. You just need to hold yourself accountable to actually doing it. So for example, I'm speaking to the man himself, right? It could be as simple as asking for 3 referrals a week. Okay. Now, the point there is you'll probably hear from advisors that, once I've learned how to ask for referrals the correct way and learn the system to orchestrate it, when I ask over time, good things happen, right? But then it's like, oh, I used to ask and I used to get them, but I've gotten away with it. I have to get back on track with it, right? So we're looking for those things where you just need to hold yourself accountable. You can already do them effectively, maybe not master them. You need to be consistent. I need to ask for this many referrals a week. I need to reach out to X number of my top 100 clients each week. So that would be kind of the activity and consistency portion.
Gotcha.
The other kind of pillar is what we call the learning or effectiveness pillars. And only someone who actually created the system can have a favorite pillar. So I will say this is my favorite pillar, because to me, this is where most financial advisors that I deal with fall short, which is they get very caught up in the reactive part of their business. They have no problem checking their email or showing up to their meetings or doing all that stuff. They're even decent in some of the consistency stuff. But where they kind of lose traction is they don't give themselves the emotional permission to actually spend time during the week getting better, right? Becoming more effective at things. And so with the effectiveness pillars, we're going to ask them to figure out, what are those skills that if you improved on would give you the biggest ROI, right? And it's kind of funny because the most important part of a learning pillar is choosing what to learn, right? Learning just to learn is not good enough in business. The podcast of the week or the book someone recommended. You got to figure out in your business which skill, if I add 3, 4, 5 points to, will give you the biggest ROI. And so the effectiveness pillars dedicate time each week to working on that skill or other skills. For example, getting better at referrals, right? I do this joke, Bill, you'll appreciate this. When I do some live advisor events, I didn't do it. I just came back from LPL Focus. It was a little too big of a room to do this, and it was about 1,000 degrees in there. But usually when I do these live advisor events, what I'll do a lot of times is I'll ask the advisors, how many here at the beginning of this year, one of your top 3 objectives going into the new year was to get more referrals. And pretty much everyone will go, oh yeah, raise their hand, whatever. And then I say, now leave up your hand if you honestly say you intentionally dedicated more than 5 hours so far this year learning how to orchestrate referrals, getting better. And they all kind of giggle and their hands kind of go down, right? And so again, with this effectiveness thing, we want to give them that permission that, yes, getting better is actually work. And then the third kind of pillar is what we call a strategic pillar. And these are things that you can do once during the week so that every time you do something else, that something else is more effective. And in the advisor world, an example might be prepping for next week's meetings, right? If you go down your list of all your meetings for next week, you do whatever homework you have to do, you do that once during the week, then every time you have those meetings are more effective.
So it sounds like the second one, the learning effectiveness, that's kind of the working on your business instead of in your business thing that we hear a lot, right? Getting better at something.
I would consider all of this working on your business.
Okay.
I would, but I maybe working on yourself, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Working on yourself. I think the delineator, and I probably didn't do a good job here, but the delineator is this. It's kind of the proactive versus the reactive, right? One of the things about the pillars when you go through the process is these are things that, although they're significant to your income, to your production, there's no immediate consequence for not doing them. Therefore, you have to be proactive. Like I don't have advisors who have pillars of show up to my meetings, right? I don't have advisors who, hey, I just, I know the CEO of this company. He's super affluent. Here's his number. Call him, right? I don't have to tell people to do that. It's the thing is, these are the things where if you do them or don't do them, it kind of doesn't matter short term. Whether you ask for 3 referrals this week or not, your paycheck's not going to change on Friday, right? Whether you go to the gym or not this week, you're not going to look any different in the mirror. But the compound effect of not doing these things, right, is what gets you. And so these pillars are things that you have to be proactive about.
So these are things that you might resist, you forget about for whatever reason. You've got to have this constant reminder.
Yeah.
So this is on a card, this sits on the desk, and the advisor every so often glances at it and gets reminded, because eventually you have to create time to do these things within the week.
Of course.
So what does that look like?
Yeah. So step one is figuring out the right things to do, your pillars, right? These
Sure.
are the right things to do.
Mm-hmm.
And getting to that point where, you can answer affirmatively on a Friday night after you've hit your pillars. Hey, I know if I continue to do these 5, 6, 7 things every week, it's just a matter of time and pressure, right? So that you have the right pillars. Well, now the problem is, okay, this is great if I can do them every week, right, by Friday. So the second part of the system is, how do you set up your days and your weeks, and what rules do you operate by so you can actually hit these proactive things with all the day-to-day of your business, right? Because again, that's the rub with being proactive, is if you don't do them, there's no immediate consequence, right? And so the second part of my book, the second part of the video course, the series, goes into how do you develop the habit of pillar execution, right? What rules do you operate by? How do you structure your week? We talk about things called pro time and some other things. But again, I suggest people do it one step at a time. Figure out what the right things are. And then step 2 is, okay, now let's set up your week, set up your rules so you can actually hit them with all the day-to-day of your business happening.
How does one's team fit into this? Are you, for some of these, you may uh, maybe not need them to accomplish it, but rely on them to remind you or hold you accountable. There's a accountability or support is kind of an underlying theme here, I guess, too.
Yeah.
Uh, Talk about how support staff, support team helps you with this.
So when it comes to the individual, there's kind of two answers to this. When it comes to the individual's accountability, right? Jane Q advisor. And is Jane going to hit her pillars? Pillars are 100% in Jane's control, or they're not pillars. Okay. So as long as that's up to Jane to hit her pillars, and I have something called your CAP, your custom accountability program. And so everyone operates differently without going down the rabbit hole. Everyone responds differently. Some people do well with external accountability. Some people do good with identity change, all different processes. I basically ask you to go through these 21 strategies and pick the 2 or 3 that work for you, right? Sometimes that is external accountability. It just depends on the person. I think the bigger picture with the team, right, is that if you're the advisor, if you're the operator, all right, and you have a support team with you, what I always recommend to teams of advisors is you need to have their reactive duties and their proactive duties. And what I mean is, okay, Bob, these are the things in the reactive realm we know you're responsible for. If this comes in, you need to do this. If someone files this or sends this, you need to do that, right? Those would be the reactive duties that everyone should know what's expected of them, right? When something happens, who handles it? The proactive part, which is where it gets a little funny, depending on the relationships, in the office, is that can either be the boss, so to speak, telling the support staff, hey, by Friday, they might not call them pillars, but by Friday of each week, these 2 things have to get done, right? You need to have identified at least 10 more people that qualify for this, and you need to have spent whatever, an hour doing that. That can be done either as a, you have to do it, you're my employee, or it's something you can kind of work on together to figure out your roles. But yeah, the support staff, it's all part of the same system.
So I'm thinking that, all right, so some of these are things that you need to be reminded of, or they wouldn't be on the card,
Right.
probably. And we know that sometimes we're not doing these things, like, let's just say in my system, having the value discussion or asking for introductions. There's a reason why we don't do it on a regular basis, because there's something else going on, right? There's
Sure.
a fear, there's a mistaken assumption, there's that psychological aspect. And you use the term, you got to give yourself emotional permission.
Yeah.
There's that. So does your system deal with that, or how does one how do you overlay the resistance, the internal resistance we might have to doing certain things that feel uncomfortable, for instance?
Usually what winds up happening, and I can't say this in every case, but when it comes to, for example, for a value discussion or a referral, okay, you might have a pillar that says, to hold yourself accountable, to ask for certain referrals or to start X number of value discussions each week, right? That would be the activity pillar.
Good.
But what happens sometimes when you're doing those, if it's just a matter of, I forget, I get caught up in it, I look back and I wish I had done it, that's where the accountability, seeing it on the card, wanting to hit your pillars comes in. If there is a psychological block to that, or it's you have, and instead of saying you're uncomfortable doing it, I like to kind of change the language a little bit and say, you haven't found a comfortable way to do it, right? You haven't found the words, to your song that you're okay with. Then to me, depending on how significant doing that is and doing it effectively, it might turn into an effectiveness pillar.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
Yeah, like spending 30 minutes, right, working on your referral song. And again, I'm using my terminology. You probably don't use this, but I call it the words to the song. And I find most people, again, when they say they're uncomfortable, I just say, no, you just haven't found a comfortable way to do it for you.
The way I look at it, it's really a matter of confidence. If we if we don't feel confident, then we feel uncomfortable and there's resistance. And it's a matter of finding the confidence. But I like the song. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing. So everyone's going to have different pillars, obviously.
Yes.
And each week, it sounds like they could change a little over time. I would think there'd be a flow to that.
Over time, yep.
Yep. So in a little bit, I'm going to ask you about specific case studies, but
yeah,
more of at a higher level view right now. What are some of the main overarching results? What can happen as the result of using this fairly simple system?
Yeah, I mean, the funny part is I'll talk about financial results in a second, and I actually in the book there are case studies of financial advisors. And I'll call it my podcast. It's really not a podcast. It's just a series of real-time sessions I've done. I have a couple of advisors in there as well. But the financial results usually come after the best result, which is the Friday night feeling. It is no matter what group I am talking to, if we have done the pillars in the past, the number one thing we get back is, I love the Friday night feeling. I love on Friday night knowing that I did what I had to do, that I'm done for the week. Because look, in a business like this, there's always something else you could be doing, right? There's always more you could be doing. From a financial standpoint, I mean, we've had people, do things like a 3x multiple of AUM raised, the 12 months after they started the pillars, versus the 12 months before. Look, this is like everything, right? You actually have to do it, right? You've got to go through with it. Here's what I can tell you confidently, and Bill, you know this because you've worked with both, maybe startup advisors or newer or younger advisors, whatever it is, all the way to the best of the best. For you to 2x, 3x, to absolutely go next level in a financial advisor practice, your business will get simpler. Here's why I know that. It has to. It has to get simpler. I don't mean the overall structure, meaning how many employees or anything like that. As the primary person in the business, though, your weekly strategy has to get simpler. Because if right now you're all over the place and this is what you're producing, you can't run twice as fast as you're currently running. You can't spend twice as many hours in the office productively as you currently are. So the only way you're gonna grow, it's gonna look simpler in the end. It's gonna be more high leverage activities coming from that individual person, if that makes sense. Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get people to understand.
Makes total sense. You told me that the pillar system is based on a concept you labeled focus management.
Yes.
Sounds like you've kind of touched on that, but it's really just bringing your focus to bear on certain things. What
it basically says is it's just kind of putting a word to something that we all know, which is your limited resource during the day is not time. Now, I don't have an issue with time management, and I'm not playing semantics or anything like this. But when you're in a business where it is your brain, right? It's what goes on between your ears that is your number one asset, your skills, your knowledge, your whatever. In any given day, long before the bell goes off, long before the bird squawks and Fred slides down the dinosaur, you're going to run out of your ability to focus on cognitively demanding activities. What most people would just call your mental energy, right? Meaning for most people on the average day at 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon, they're not quite as sharp. They're not absolutely crushing it. They're not at their most creative. They're not at their peak mental state. And so what I'm saying is, instead of just looking at time, you need to protect your bandwidth, your mental energy, because that really is your limiting resource. I mean, some people say, oh, I work 10, 12, 14-hour days. And I believe them because I've done that, right? I've worked those kind of days. But I'm under no illusion that hours 10 through 14 are as impactful, you know what I mean, as hours one, two, three, four. And so focus management, what I talk about in the book is you need to manage when you make a decision about where to spend your time. It's not just the time, like, oh, I'm going to spend an hour doing this or 3 hours doing that. You need to think about the bandwidth you're going to give up, right? Taking a call from a customer that is a whiner, okay, that is going to, make things, that call, you might be sitting there just listening for an hour and coming back. That's going to drain you, right? That's going to drain you. So that's what I mean by focus management. It's just a different way of looking at it.
I wonder how many people caught your reference to the Flintstones and the horn going off and Fred sliding down the dinosaur's tail at the end of the day.
I will tell you, the ones who didn't catch it, they're also the ones who are trying to figure out where to download an index card from right now. So,
so the book is The Index Card Business Plan. I need to remind people of that. Brian, in about a minute or so, I do want you to report on a few case studies, real advisors producing real results using your system. And I also want to kind of end up with a little bit more on this. You've alluded to a couple of times Friday night feeling. I think we have a sense of what that means. First, let's take a brief pause to listen to a word from our sponsor, PodRocketInfluenceAcademy.com, brought to you by Proudmouth. First, they make this podcast possible. Thank you, folks. And their core business is helping financial advisors accelerate their influence through marketing activities like podcasting.
This podcast is sponsored by Proudmouth, the Influence Accelerators. It's tough to be seen as an expert if you're spending most of your time as a salesperson. That's why we help industry experts like you spend less time selling and more time advising by turning you into a trusted subject matter authority. We help amplify your influence over a growing audience of magnetically attracted fans who will chase you down instead. Visit proudmouth.com to learn more.
I need to take about 45 seconds to let you know that our newest and even better than before Academy for Relationship Marketing is now online, waiting and ready to help you take incremental growth to exponential growth by multiplying your best clients. When you go to thecatesacademy.com, you'll see 4 leading edge state-of-the-art courses, how to communicate your value more effectively, which is pretty fundamental to everybody's success, especially if you're going to start getting more referrals and introductions and seeing more people. Course 2 is all about becoming super referable, getting referrals without asking, create that environment where referrals and introductions are easier. Course 3 is about how to be proactive in a way that really fits. It's appropriately proactive. When folks come to me for coaching, they often say, Bill, is there a way to be proactive without looking like the cheesy or creepy referral guy? Those are the terms I always hear. And yes, there is. And then course 4 is all about securing the introduction, the connection to the new prospect, because that's pretty important. There's a bunch of ancillary courses as well. We have one on social event marketing and a few other things. And I'd love to tell you more about it, but I want to get back to the interview. So just head over to thecatesacademy.com. Make sure, by the way, that you use the coupon code TCA200, The Cates Academy, TCA200, and you'll save $2 off your investment. And while you're there, there's a form. If questions come up, fill out the form, go straight to me. We can hop on the phone for a few minutes, see, does it make sense for you? We want to make sure if you invest this in the Academy that it is perfect for you. Otherwise, we don't want you be wasting your time or dollars. So now back to my conversation with my featured guest, Brian Margolis, author of the Index Card Business Plan. And Brian's website, by the way, is productivitygiant.com. That's productivitygiant.com. Brian, it's time for a few case studies, real people, real results. Where do you want to start?
All right, let's start with, there's a couple in the book, so I'll let people look at the case studies that I put in the book and see the results. Sure. I will tell you, let's start with an established advisor. So this gentleman was established by anybody's standards. Okay. And, he was kind of in that stage where he had a big business, a lot going on, but two things were driving him crazy, which was, number one, he was still working 5 long days. right? He was still working 5 long days a week. And it was driving him crazy that he felt like he had so much juice in his book and he knew what to do. He felt like there was just money sitting there. There was assets sitting there, but he felt like he never got around to getting them. And so what we did for this gentleman, and I'll give you his pillars best I can from memory. I'll be real close, if not 100% accurate. But what we did for him, which basically put him at a 3 to 4 day work week, plus, for the first time in about 7 or 8 years, was getting, a high number on, a high new revenue number for your new AUM. Let me use the advisor language, right? And what his pillars were, basically, his first pillar was to schedule 5 top 100 meetings a week for the future, meaning he didn't have to have 5 meetings a week because he didn't control that, but he had to put on the forward calendar at least 5 meetings or phone calls with his top 100 clients, because he knew, right, that when he's in front of his top clients, good things happen, right? It worked so well, I stopped doing it, kind of thing, right? So that was a predictable result for him. His second pillar was to update and review his opportunity list twice a week. So twice a week, he would go back to any notes he had since the last time he did it. He would put in place, any new opportunities, both within his book. Opportunities can be with existing clients or with new people. And then by reviewing it twice a week and only, and kind of deciding who needs that next poke, nothing fell through the cracks. Because it used to drive him crazy that he'd look at notes and be like, oh my God, I talked about this with someone 3 months ago. I let the ball slip. So that was kind of his nothing falls through the cracks. His third pillar was he sends 3 non-sale touches a week. Non-sale touches without going down the road. Advisors have heard stuff like this. They're kind of just non-sales touches with clients that kind of deepen relationships and can help orchestrate referrals if done correctly. So again, one of these things, he's like, I used to do it, I just stopped doing it. His fourth pillar, you'll like this, Bill, was to spend 30 minutes learning how to orchestrate referrals, because his answer to me when I said, where do your best clients come from? He said, referrals. I said, okay, do you get referrals or do you orchestrate them? And he just goes, I just kind of get them, right? And when I get them, great. And so he realized that he needs to be more intentional about it. Now, I don't know how to, I'm not a teacher of referrals. I'll leave that to you. But he spent, and it doesn't sound like a lot of time, but 30 minutes a week just diving into material like books like yours, different experts, podcasts, whatever, so he could become a referral ninja, because that was his biggest avenue to growth outside of his follow-up. And then his fifth pillar was just to ask for 1 referral a week. That's simple. Just start with 1, right? Proactively ask for 1. And it's not that he didn't do anything but those 5 things, but he knew on Friday night, man, I scheduled top 5 100 meetings. I'm going to average that a week. All my follow-up is done. My NSTs are out. My referrals are on point. It was just a matter of time and pressure. And so that would be like a very quick kind of case study where, a very successful advisor started actually bringing in more money, working less time by focusing on those 5 things every week.
Money, less time. I think that's the definition of increased productivity.
Yeah, I mean, it's the multiple on your output. Look, a lot of advisors, and I shouldn't really say advisors. This is just human beings, right? Well, when they're in business, they kind of think in these terms, which is, will this positively or could this positively impact my business? And if the answer is that it could possibly positively impact their business, they just say yes to it. And the problem with that is you're saying yes to way too much, right? The question really is this the best use of my time and mental energy, right? What am I going to give up? What could I possibly get in return? And to think about that in terms of ROI and multiples instead of just, hey, if it could be good for my business, I'll do it.
Good. Great result. Great example. Yeah. Give us one more.
One more. I'm trying to remember what his pillars are. That's the hardest part, is remembering what his pillars are. This is the gentleman who I think he tripled his 12-month AUM based on his previous 12 months. And I'd be lying if I said I remembered his pillars. He's one of my favorites because I do remember he only had 3 pillars. I remember one had to do with scheduling existing clients. One had to do with one was an effectiveness pillar in terms of prospecting, getting better at prospecting. And then one, I believe, was his follow-up pillar. And for him, it was as simple as that. It was make sure I get better at prospecting, make sure I reach out to X number of people a week, and make sure I'm following up. Nothing's falling through the cracks. But for him, just that again, I could be off by a little bit. If that person's listening, they know who they are, right? He actually brought in, for the next 12 months, he brought in 3 times the AUM he had brought in for the previous 12 months. So that was pretty exciting by really boiling his business down.
Now, prospecting, that sounds a little too general, I guess.
It is.
So it was probably more specific and you're just not recalling it, or?
Well, so he had there's a prospecting in terms of an activity pillar, right? Which is, I'm going to reach out to, X number of cold people a week or something like that. That would be like an activity pillar. For him, it was an effectiveness pillar, meaning he was spending time each week learning how to speak to prospects, learning the words to the song to take someone from, hey, what do you do? Or, hey, why are you calling me? Or why are you here in my business? Right? He was learning the messaging from that point to the getting an appointment set up. So he was literally learning the words to the song, the messaging of prospecting, how to basically his song of why you might want to meet with me. And so he was already talking to a lot of people. He was not a shy person. So the activity was not an issue for this gentleman. That I remember. The issue was being comfortable and being effective are 2 different things. And he was very comfortable talking to them, but he never bothered to learn, or learn in a deep way. What do you actually say? What kind of questions do you ask to set up the appointment versus try to sell them all in one shot?
Sounds like a little more intentionality and purpose. Let's sort of wrap this up with this Friday night feeling.
My favorite.
Alluded to it. I guess it's the feeling that you got her done, right? I mean,
yes.
That's one of the goals of your system, is how you feel at the end of the week, I guess.
Well, yeah, because again, the problem with results-based professionals like myself, you, a financial advisor, is there's always more that you could be doing, right? We don't have a 9 to 5. We don't have a checkbox normally that says I'm done working. And the average person, they're going to handle the reactive stuff. That's never an issue, right? They're going to deal with things that have immediate consequences. Like, we're kind of wired that way. It's knowing on Friday night that I did what I needed to do, right? That I had a good week, and basing it on that versus your strategy versus a feeling, because our feelings can be very misleading. Like I was saying earlier, you can do all the wrong things. 2 clients or prospects that have kind of been circling the drain happen to land in a 24-hour period, and you're like, I had a great week. And then other weeks you did all the right things for the compound effect to take over, but stuff just didn't happen, and you start questioning everything, right? You start changing directions when you really don't need to. And so that's what this is about. It's about figuring out what the right lead indicators are, what's in your control.
Gotcha. Brian Margolis, this has been interesting, productive conversation, I think. Thank you for being our featured guest today on Top Advisor Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bill.
Yeah, you bet. It's a good one. To you, the listener of this podcast, I may ask you a small favor. If you like this episode or the podcast in general, please leave a 5-star review on the platform you're listening to this show. Not all the platforms have a place for reviews, but if yours does, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. If you haven't already, head over to thecatesacademy.com to check out our newest online resource to help you create exponential growth. That's thecatesacademy.com. Don't forget to use the coupon code TCA200. This is Bill Cates reminding you that ideas do not make you more successful. Only acting on those ideas will bring you the success you desire. Thanks for stopping by. Thank you for listening to the Top Advisor Podcast, brought to you by Proud Mouse Pod Rocket Academy. I encourage you to visit my website, referralcoach.com, for links to my books, online courses, and to register for the Cates Academy.